turn on your cameras so we can take a photo group and share a moment of togetherness in this virtual gathering. Second, presentation by Professor Carlos Mendes. And next, we will move into the central part of our event, featuring presentation by our esteemed guest, Professor Carlos Mendes. He will thoroughly explore the topic, providing valuable insight into geospatial data and regional development. And third, question and answer session. So following Professor Carlos Mendes' presentation, we will have a transition into an interactive question and answer session. This segment is intended to encourage engagement, and you can participate by either raising your hand or typing your question in the chat box in your Zoom, right? And the last is closing. So to wrap up of our event, I will provide closing remark. During this time, I will express our sincere appreciation to all our participants, including Professor Carlos Mendes. This remark will formally mark the end of the today's event. So, okay, everyone, now we move to group photo together. So we want to snap our group photo to remember this special moment. Please, if you can turn on your cameras, yeah, it will make us feel more connected during our event. So, yeah, please turn on your cameras now. Mas Dandi mungkin bisa dibantu untuk ini ya, screenshot ya, ya screenshot untuk apa namanya ini sesi fotonya. Okay, so please turn on your cameras now. We will have photo groups together. Okay, maybe I will count from 3.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so from 3, I will count 3, 2, 1. Cheers. Okay, once more. 3, 2, 1. Cheers.
Okay.
Is it okay, Mas Dandi?
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay. So, okay, thank you very much, everyone. We have a group photo together, and we will share with you, maybe in the chat box later. All right, so before we start our webinar, let me show you some brief curriculum vitae of Professor Carlos Mendes. So let me read maybe quickly. Yeah. So yeah, Professor Carlos Mendes has had a great journey in education and work. He first got a degree in business economics in 2008 in Bolivia. In 2007, he also studied business economics in Chile as a visiting student. And later, he went to Japan to learn more about international development. In 2010, he started as a research student at Nagoya University. And in 2012, he got a master's degree in international development from the same university. Then in 2015, he earned a PhD or doctoral degree in international development from Nagoya University. And now, Professor Mendes is teaching at Nagoya University as an associate professor. He also started the group of quantitative regional and computational science network in 2019. Before that, from 2015 until 2018, he worked as a lecturer at Kyushu University in Japan. And Professor Mendes' journey showed that with hard work, you can achieve your goals in education and have a successful career. He is specialist in development economics and regional economics, which are his primary field. He's also knowledgeable in applied econometrics and macroeconomics, which are his secondary areas of expertise. This makes him well-rounded in academic in these important areas of study. In addition, Professor Mendes possesses a wide range of computer skill, including programming languages such as Python, R, Stata, MATLAB, Julia, JavaScript, Gauss, and LaTeX. He also proficient in various user software like QGIS, Geoda, Maple, Mathematica, Fuse, SPSS, Minitab, GTAB, ADEP, and his strong computer skill further enhance his ability to conduct research and contribute to his academic field. And moreover, his recent achievement include 2 notable awards in 2023. He received the top cited article, 2021 until 2022 in the journals of regional science, policy, and practice, and review of development economics. So this kind of the journal is very high quality impact in the international reputation. And this award were granted for his outstanding contribution in the field of regional convergence, spatial dependence, and spatial productivity disparities. And Professor Mendes' dedication and expertise have been recognized at highest level in his field. So now, without wasting time, Professor Carlos, the virtual floor is yours. Please proceed with your enlightening presentation. Please, Sensei.
Thank you very much, Muiz, for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'll be very happy to share this very exciting progress that we've seen in the field of regional development. At the end of the day, we want to understand why some regions are more developed than others. By regions, you can think of why the capital of a country is more developed than the rural areas, why some continents are more developed than others. The big question is, why and how can we understand the large differences that we see in prosperity across countries, but also within countries? And I think all of you coming from Indonesia, you understand that within Indonesia, you can find very, very advanced regions, but you can also find very underdeveloped regions. So that is the field of regional development. And today, I'm going to talk about regional development, but from a data science perspective. How can we use data to understand these development differences? And in particular, new forms of data that economists and social scientists are not used to. For instance, how can we use satellite images to understand development? For many years, it was thought that economists are used to work with tabular data that can fit in Excel. But this new form of big data, like data from satellite images, it's for another fields. And my goal here is to show you that this data revolution that we are observing, that we are experiencing, is an opportunity for new research. And as you can see in my first slide, you can see that this new form of data, big geospatial data, can allow us to understand new insights about regional differences and regional development. So I hope that by the end of this talk, you can find new opportunities for doing research, because the world is changing, technology is changing, data is changing. And when something changes, that is an opportunity for some of us. For other people, that's a threat. But I believe if you are an academic or if you are a serious student, you see this technological advancement as an opportunity to learn better, as an opportunity to learn new things. And hopefully today you will have a basic idea of these new developments that are happening in the field of geospatial data science. So let's start. I'm going to use video because I believe for some sections, an image and a video can communicate much more. So let's watch our first video, because here you will have the questions. What are the key questions that we are trying to answer in the field of regional development? So if we understand the questions, we can start focalizing our journey. So let's start by watching this video about the key questions of regional development.
As our world gets smaller, and what happens somewhere else, it's closer and closer to home. There's so much the world wants to know.
But we don't know a lot of
I think
things.
there's a
We
lot of
don't know.
questions out there.
People very insecure.
It's not enough to know we're interconnected. We have to understand how and collaborate to build a better future. Your answers matter more than ever. Thank you for your vital work.
All right. So this video has highlighted some keywords that I hope you can remember by the end of this talk. First keyword is connections. Connections that happened over time, but those connections can be changed by shocks. COVID changed the way we live. COVID changed the way we learn. And this has been a challenge, but also an opportunity to find new ways to get ready for the next crisis, to understand how crises evolve. And something that is very unique to COVID is that it has a geographical pattern. It started in one city and then it spread to the whole world. And this is a fundamental topic of regional development, because if a crisis can start in one place and then it can spread to the rest of the world, we can also think on the other side, if a development strategy and if a positive shock starts in one place, how can we diffuse development from one region to another? So technology changes over time, but technology also spreads across the space. And that is a fundamental idea of the science of where. When somebody asks me, what do you do research about? Well, I do research about why some regions are more developed than other regions. And I try to find an answer based on different perspectives, but one main perspective is location. Depending on your location, your performance can be different. If you are lucky enough to be surrounded by high performers, you also tend to perform better. But if you are surrounded by lazy people, imagine that you go to school and next to you, you have a very lazy student or a student who's sleeping or a student who's not paying attention, your neighbors can negatively affect you. But if you are lucky enough, if you are surrounded by successful students, by successful professionals, your neighbors can also have a positive effect. So a key component of development that I like to emphasize when I teach is location matters. your neighbors matter, and the interactions with your neighbors matter. And you will see that there are many theories that make an assumption that is very difficult to believe. There are many theories that assume that whatever happens here does not affect here, that regions are independent, that people are independent. And I understand what can be the motivation. In some cases, that can be useful. But what COVID taught us is that we are interconnected, that we are interconnected. And if something happens in this place, it's possible that this shock can spread to many other places. And this interconnection is an important component of regional development nowadays. We perform together, we dance together. If you make a mistake, whether I like it or not, that can affect me. If you achieve something, that can inspire me to achieve more. Your neighbors, your neighborhood is an important determinant of your performance. And that is a key element of this talk, because if somebody asks me, what do I do research about? Well, my research is about the geography of development, that development doesn't happen at random. Development happens in one place, and that can spread. And that spread is something that we can study. The geography of development is a very interesting topic because we have new data, new methods, and new insights. So that is the message of today. Development has a geographical component. Development does not happen at random. Naturally, you will see that regions that have access to the sea are more developed than regions that do not have access to the sea. But you will see that capital cities tend to be much more developed than rural areas. So development has multiple dimensions, and one of those dimensions is the geographical dimension. And although I am not a geographer, you do not need to be a geographer to understand that geography is important for development. And motivated on the importance of geography, with a group of colleagues and students, we conduct research about the geography of development. But in particular, we study topics such as sustainable development, but from a regional perspective. We also study economic growth, but instead of studying the economic growth of the entire country, we study economic growth of each city, of each district, of each province. So we go into the details, not only the macro picture, but we study the regional picture, the meso level. So we study topics like poverty, but the way we study poverty is from a geospatial poverty perspective. If my neighbor is poor, to what extent my poor neighbor is going to affect me? If I am surrounded by poor neighbors, that is called a spatial poverty trap. I am poor because my neighbors are poor, and they are poor because I am poor. And we trade and we work together. So we are trapped in a poverty situation that has a geographical perspective. So geography can be an important component for understanding development. Now, from a technology point of view, another key aspect of the video is the role of technology. And technology has been evolving very, very fast. And one of the new phases of technology is that we have big data. We have a lot of data nowadays. The data is big. It doesn't fit in a simple computer. We need a larger computer. We need cloud computing. We need new technologies to be able to understand this big data. But now the data has a very unique feature, and the data is geospatial. That data has location. Let me tell you the following. There is a very nice statistic that I like to share. And there is a paper that to some extent tries to measure how much data we have in the world nowadays. So we know that there is much more data in the last 10 years than in the previous years of history. We have a lot of data. Okay, we know that. But did you know that about 80% of all of the data of the world, about 80% of all of the data of the world has a geographical location, that we can identify where something is happening. Your smartphone is able to understand where you are. Your smartphone is able to tell you where to go. So most of the data today is geospatial. 80% of the entire data of the world can have a geographical location, latitude, longitude, distance, who's my neighbor, how far am I from the equatorial line. So location and geospatial data is important, but let me ask you this. I know that many of you take statistics courses or data science courses. So when I was a student, I took statistics, but can I ask you, from 100 hours of statistics, how many hours do you use for understanding geospatial data? I'm sure that is less than 8%. And here there is a problem in education, because it's in particular data science education, because most of the data has a geolocation, but we do not invest more than 8% to teach geospatial data analysis. So here there is the opportunity. There are new technologies that use geotechnologies and geodata, but the geo education is missing. And one of my main goals is to teach my students to be able to understand geospatial data. And hopefully by the end of this talk, you will have a glimpse of what I mean by geospatial data. And I think some of you know what the field of econometrics is, but I think very few of you know about the spatial econometrics field. And this is another very important advance, that now we have this subfield known as spatial econometrics. And the idea is that my performance affects the performance of my neighbors, and my neighbors affects my performance. Is that a big effect? Is that a small effect? We want to find out. But at least we have new tools, we have new data. And with this new data and with these new tools, we are able to understand at a much better level the geography of development. So at any time, feel free to ask questions in the chat, and I'll be happy to answer those questions later. So in the rest of this talk, I'm going to talk about why we should care about regional development. How can we study regional development from outer space? And then we have an opportunity, because we can study regional development from outer space, and we can take advantage of geospatial data science, essentially new technologies to measure data, new technologies to understand what the data is telling you. So let's start with the motivation of why should we study regional development? And let me start with this picture. I show you this picture and you tell me what you see. Think about it. I think you've seen this to some extent in other countries. But what is the message of this picture? Well, you see, within a country, within a city, you can find places like this, very high, very developed buildings, surrounded by very underdeveloped places. So this is what I mean by regional development. Within the same city, within the same neighborhood, you can find highly developed places and highly underdeveloped places. And the question is, I can see that with my eyes, but how can we measure in a more detailed way this pattern? How can we predict? Do we think that in the future, this gap is going to continue? How can we explain this gap? Why within the same city, some areas are more developed and some other areas are less developed? So at the end of the day, understanding regional development is understanding, to some extent, this picture. How can we measure development over time and across space? How can we predict what might happen if there is a crisis? And how can we explain why some regions are developed and why some regions are underdeveloped if they speak the same language, if they live very close to each other, if they have similar cultures? why they have these large differences. So this is the question of regional development. I think many of you know that in international development, it's very common to understand why Africa is poor, why Europe is more developed. But even within countries, you find regions that are very developed and regions that are very underdeveloped. And that is the field of regional development, which is something that all of you understand very well. When you go to Jakarta or when you go to Papua, you immediately can see that. But the question is, why? Why that is happening? Or the other question is the gap between Papua and Jakarta closing down, is increasing? If it's increasing, at what speed? If it's closing down, at what speed? What is needed to reduce the gap? So these are key questions of regional development. But let me show you another picture that hopefully is going to motivate your interest. Look at this. Here, I am focusing my attention in one neighborhood. And in the same neighborhood, you can find a very rich area where each apartment has its own private pool. It has a beautiful tennis court, it has a big pool, and each apartment is very, very developed. But next to that apartment, you see these very poor places. So this is what I mean by regional inequality and regional poverty and regional development. There is a poor neighborhood surrounded by a rich neighborhood. Do you think that this poor neighborhood is going to negatively affect the rich neighborhood? Do you think that the rich neighborhood is going to positively affect the poor neighborhood? So this is another picture that clearly shows you that development has a regional or geospatial pattern. Development can be understood to a larger extent if we understand where development is happening. Let me show you the same picture, but from another perspective. Let's see this picture over time, because you say, this happened in the past, but do you think that this picture is going to happen again in the future? Well, have a look at this picture. So this is the before in 2004, and this is the after. Do you see differences? Do you see big differences? Well, maybe here you see that the tennis court is a little bit older. Now we have more trees, but the main pattern is the same. The initially poor region is still poor, and the initially rich region is still rich. So here, this is an example that development gaps within countries can persist over time. And although this is an example from Sao Paulo, Brazil in South America, I think you can also find similar examples in other countries. And this is just to show you a picture of the topic that we are interested. We want to understand why we see these development gaps, and we want to understand why this development gap continues over time. Now, later, I'm going to show you other data set, but I believe that a picture can tell you what's the issue. A picture can tell you why this is important, and a picture can tell you that the process of development can also be understood if we understand where development is happening. Now, this is another picture that is changing over time. So here, some of you might recognize this place. This is Las Vegas. And you can see over time, development is happening in Las Vegas. And this development process has a geographical pattern. Cities evolve over space. And here you can see that we are studying development, this time using satellite images, right? So we can use satellite images to study development from above. And we can see that over time, a city grows, a city expands. Let me show you another example. And this is another very interesting pattern of development. What is happening here? Do you see the pattern of development? You see that, in particular, regions that have access to the sea, they have an additional opportunity that opportunity is trade, international trade. And here you can see the coastal expansion in Dubai, and here you can see the expansion of Playa del Carmen in Mexico. So development happens in some specific locations for some specific reasons. So here the message is that if you want to develop and you live near the sea, you can take that as an opportunity to participate in international trade. But if you want to be competitive in international trade, you need to have a good infrastructure, right? So here you see that development happens over space. But interestingly, I am observing what happens in these two places from above. So I am understanding what happens in the Earth from outside the Earth, because these pictures are taken by satellites that are outside the Earth. And that is the message of one, that is one of the key messages of this lecture, is that to understand development, we can understand development from below, going to the field, using field surveys, but we can also understand development from above by using satellite images. Now, the next slide is going to tell you that development is, regional development in particular, is an important goal that countries are achieving. And some of you already know that there are the Sustainable Development Goals. And in particular, there is the Sustainable Goal 11 that aims to achieve sustainable cities and communities. This is a goal that we pay a lot of attention because it's telling you development happens at the city level, development happens at the community level, development happens at the village level. So understanding the national economy is important. It is very important. Understanding the microeconomy is also important. But understanding the mesoeconomy, the city economy, the province economy is also important. And I think many of you have taken courses in macroeconomics. I think many of you have taken courses in microeconomics, but I think very few of you have taken courses in regional economics. And it's in regional economics where we can find opportunities for development. If the macro part is not working well, and if the micro part is not working well either, maybe we can find some opportunities at the meso level, at the regional level. And that is why Sustainable Development 11 is telling you cities are important, communities are important, because they can increase inequality, pollution can have at the city level, and economic growth can happen also at the city level. So this is another perspective. We have the macro perspective, we have the micro perspective, but we also have the regional perspective. But what is the problem with the regional perspective? What has been the main constraint for the regional perspective? That is something that I hope we can discuss later. The problem is that, at least in the past, getting data to study cities and being able to compare Jakarta with Tokyo, it was very complicated because life in Jakarta and life in Tokyo, it's different. And if I want to compare, let's say, Jakarta with Phnom Penh, that's also more complicated because the way Phnom Penh it measures its economy and the way Jakarta measures its economy is not the same, right? So it's complicated to compare city A with city B from different countries. So for many years, it was very complicated to do research in regional issues because there was no enough data. I think some of you might know this video already. This is one of my favorite videos to understand macroeconomic development, economic development that happens at the nation level. But within this video, there is a small section about regional development. So I'm going to show you this video, and your task is to understand until what point we use macro data and from which point we use regional data. And hopefully you will understand that regional data can give you another perspective. So let's watch this video together.
Visualization is right at the heart of my own work too. I teach global health. And I know having the data is not enough. I have to show it in ways people both enjoy and understand. Now, I'm going to try something I've never done before. Animating the data in real space, with a bit of technical assistance from the crew.
So, here we go. First, an axis for health, life expectancy, from 25 years to 75 years. And down here, an axis for wealth, income per person, $400, $4,000, and $40,000. So down here is poor and sick, and up here is rich and healthy. Now, I'm going to show you the world 200 years ago, in 1810. Here come all the countries. Europe brown, Asia red, Middle East green, Africa south of Sahara blue, and the Americas yellow. And the size of the country bubbles show the size of the population. And in 1810, it was pretty crowded down there, wasn't it? All countries were sick and poor. Life expectancy were below 40 in all countries. And only UK and the Netherlands were slightly better off, but not much. And now, why start the world? The Industrial Revolution makes countries in Europe and elsewhere move away from the rest. But the colonized countries in Asia and Africa, they are stuck down there. And eventually, the Western countries get healthier and healthier. And now we slow down to show the impact of the First World War and the Spanish flu epidemic. What a catastrophe! And now I speed up through the 1920s and the 1930s. And in spite of the Great Depression, Western countries forge on towards greater wealth and health. Japan and some others try to follow, but most countries stay down here. Now, after the tragedies of the Second World War, we stop a bit to look at the world in 1948. 1948 was a great year. The war was over, Sweden topped the medal table at the Winter Olympics, and I was born. But the differences between the countries of the world was wider than ever. United States was in the front, Japan was catching up, Brazil was way behind, Iran was getting a little richer from oil, but still had short lives. And the Asian giants, China, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Indonesia, they were still poor and sick down here. But look what is about to happen. Here we go again. In my lifetime, former colonies gained independence, and then finally they started to get healthier and healthier and healthier. And in the 1970s, then countries in Asia and Latin America started to catch up with the Western countries. They became the emerging economies. Some in Africa follows. Some Africans were stuck in civil war and others hit by HIV. And now we can see the world today in the most up-to-date statistics. Most people today live in the middle, but there are huge differences at the same time between the best of countries and the worst of countries. And there are also huge inequalities within countries. These bubbles show country averages, but I can split them. Take China, I can split it into provinces. There goes Shanghai. It has the same wealth and health as Italy today. And there is the poor inland province Guizhou. It is like Pakistan. And if I split it further, the rural parts are like Ghana in Africa.
And yet, despite the enormous disparities today, we have seen 200 years of remarkable progress. That huge historical gap between the West and the rest is now closing. We have become an entirely new converging world. And I see a clear trend into the future. With aid, trade, green technology and peace, it's fully possible that everyone can make it to the healthy, wealthy corner.
Well, what you just seen in the last few minutes is a story of 200 countries shown over 200 years and beyond. It involved plotting of 120,000 numbers. Pretty neat, huh?
So what you just saw is one of my favorite videos that is telling you how the world has been evolving over time in terms of economic development, but also social development measured through life expectancy. And within that video, I really like this part that says, even within China, there are some regions like Shanghai that region is as developed as Italy. But also within China, there are regions that are as poor as Ghana. So this is an excellent example of the field of regional development, that sometimes the national statistics can cover very important differences. And these regional differences deserve to be studied, because you can see that within one country, we can find Europe, and within the same country, we can find Africa. And I believe that within Indonesia, you can find some regions that are similar to some European cities, but within Indonesia, there are some regions as poor as some African regions. So within a country, we can study regional development. It seems interesting. Within countries, there is an open question, but there is a problem. Where do I get the data? Where should I get the data to study regional development? If I study national development, the World Bank is collecting a very useful macro data set. The World Bank also collects many micro surveys. But until very recently, it was very difficult to get regional data, data of cities, data of provinces. And luckily, the World Bank has started collecting that data more and more frequently these days. But there are new opportunities. Before getting this data, it was very complicated. But now getting this data is much more manageable. So this is an opportunity. New data, new opportunities. Now, let me show you this picture. This is the macro data that all of you know, very similar to the video. Look at how the data looks when we open the subnational economy. Look how the data grows when we use regional data. This is the macro data on the left, and this is the regional data on the right. And the variables are the same. On the vertical axis, we have life expectancy. On the horizontal axis, we have GDP per capita. So I really want you to understand what happens when you study macro development and what happens when you study regional development. Regional development is much more complicated. Regional development is larger. Regional development is challenging. And this is an interesting challenge. It's an interesting opportunity, because now, after many years, we have these regional data. And there you see, this is an opportunity. When I was a student like you, the only data that I was able to get was macro data. But nowadays, you can get this regional data to study the world. And I'm sure you will find new opportunities, and you will find new insights, and you will find new possibilities to understand why some regions are more developed than others. Now, if you are interested, in the slides, I put a link to some additional videos that explain how this new regional data has been created. In particular, there is a very nice book by the McKinsey Global Institute, and they have compiled a book where they present this micro-regional view of the world, that we can understand development from a regional perspective. This is a highly recommended book and a video that hopefully later you can watch it. But for the sake of time, let me conclude. The world can be understood from below, but it can also be understood from above. Satellites, like in this picture, they give you another perspective. Satellites can give you big data, big geospatial data. And here, the world can be understood at a much more local level. And interestingly, if you look at this picture, there are connections. So here you see this region is connected with this other region. This region is connected with this other region. So having data from satellites can also help us understand the connections between the cities, the connections between the regions. So I would like you to remember this picture, because when somebody asks me, how do you see the world? I see the world as countries. That's an important component. But I also see the world as a collection of regions. But to understand how these regions interact, satellites can give us an opportunity to understand regional development. Now, why should you care? Let me show you a video that is going to hopefully tell you that satellite images are interesting. So for the sake of time, let me skip this video. Maybe later you can watch it, but let me go to the next part. Nowadays, there are many new data sources.
Wow.
Let me stop this
first video.
Okay. If you want to get regional data, there are new projects that aim to collect data. GeoQuery is one of the latest advances in regional data because they use satellite images and they use any other very important technologies to measure many regional issues from outer space. So this is a new database. You just go to geoquery.org and you can see where to get the data. And this is one of the easiest ways to get satellite data in an Excel spreadsheet. So it's ready to use. So you don't have to be an aerospace engineer to understand how satellite works. So you just go to this website and you get satellite data for free in an Excel spreadsheet, and you can understand the difference between one poor district in Java and one poor district in Papua. So this is one of my favorite data sets that I like to recommend to beginners, but there are other projects. So these are other projects where you can get data for free. You can get very interesting data to understand human development. This is the new website of the World Bank. So the World Bank recently this year, they launched this website called the Geospatial Poverty Portal, and they are trying to measure poverty at the subnational level. So this is a new data set that now all of you can easily get access to. And there are other projects, and there are many, many other projects. So what I want to emphasize here is that we have new data, and new data is new information. What we need is educated students who can work with this data and who can discover new stories behind this data. Now, there are many, many other projects, but for the sake of simplicity, I just share with you all of these websites, and my slides are available in my own website, but also are available to you. Then, essentially, what I want you to understand is that we are living in the era of big geospatial data. And if you are able to understand this data, you are able to understand new opportunities. Now, hopefully you are motivated enough, but now let me show you an example, a specific example, how to study regional development from outer space, okay? And to do that, I think this picture is telling you that satellites are monitoring the Earth, and that this is not only useful for natural scientists, it's also useful for social scientists like you. And let me show you a social science example. This picture is a picture of the world at night. And I really like it. When I was a student like you, I used to have this picture in my computer because it's beautiful. But nowadays, I use this picture to understand development. How? Let's watch this video together.
We always talk about economic growth. We worry when there is a growth slowdown. And in times of turbulence, there is more skepticism. How real are the figures we are using? Do they really capture what is going on? In developing countries, there is a large informal sector, and it's very difficult to capture it through the statistical instruments we typically use. We don't have data with high frequency, most often just annual. We don't have data about states or provinces or districts that is reliable enough. So what can be done? One promising avenue to improve our understanding of economic activity comes from new technologies. For example, the use of nightlight data from satellite imagery. Look at South Asia. Look how it becomes brighter as it grows. And this is something we see across countries. Here, we measure the intensity of night light. The more to the right, the brighter. And here, the level of economic activity. The more we go up, the more economic activity there is. This point is Afghanistan in 1992, a poor country mainly in the dark. But then look, as years go by, how it becomes both brighter and stronger from an economic point of view. And it is the same across countries in the region. This kind of data has enormous advantages. Satellite imagery is cheap to obtain. It can be obtained almost in real time. You can get it with monthly frequency. You can get it by the square kilometer, and it's not subject to any sort of interference in the way it is created. And so in this report, we illustrate how the use of this new technology can improve our measurement and our understanding of economic activity.
So this is a book report of the World Bank called Growth Out of the Blue. And the idea is that we can measure economic growth from satellite images. They are cheap, they are available. What we only need is capable individuals who can understand those images and who can process those images. So this is an opportunity that many international organizations realized, that for many years, satellites have been monitoring the Earth, but not only for weather forecasts, but now we can use that information to understand regional development. And here, it turns out that nighttime lights are very related to economic development. The most developed places tend to produce a lot of light. Think about New York, think about Tokyo. You go to those places, they are very rich, but they also produce a lot of light. You can go to a very poor place and they produce very little light. So now we have a monitoring system to understand where development happens, but we can also understand at what speed development happens. So this is an opportunity for economists, because economists care a lot about GDP. But it's also an opportunity for other social sciences, not only economics. Now, in the next video, I'm going to show you how nighttime lights can be very useful to understand problems beyond economics, like political problems, like social problems. So in the next video, you are going to see what happens when the lights turn off. So this is called development beyond economics.
How much can a single picture tell us about ourselves? This is a composite image of several satellite photos. It can help us better understand the current developments and conflicts underway. The amount of light pollution is most severe in heavily populated areas, as well as in regions of high prosperity. In Europe, the Benelux region and the densely populated Po Valley are so bright that the individual towns blend into one big sea of light. Especially in the Arab world, the extraction of oil creates bright lights from the flaring of gas. And in Africa, you can trace the path of the Nile River, which, as the lifeline of Egypt, attracts civilization and is filled with commercial boats. In the mostly uninhabited regions of Western Australia, the satellites could even capture lights from wildfires that occurred over a span of 22 days. And in Asia, the Indian subcontinent is clearly standing out. Nearly 20% of the planet's population lives here. And the rapid population and economic growth can be seen by comparing the area from how it looked in 2012 and then again in 2016. However, it's just as interesting to look at the regions where there is no light. The Syrian civil war, which has wiped out hundreds of thousands of lives, has darkened the country. Due to the ongoing fights, the electrical grid is only partially available and the power supply is poor. Aleppo, the largest city in Syria, is considered an important cultural place. The Old Town has been a UNESCO World Heritage Site since 1986, but the war has almost completely destroyed the historic city. The darkening can also be observed in Raqqa, which has long acted as the de facto capital of the terrorist Islamic State. When we see a city darken in these images, it shows the annihilation of a place and its history, and ultimately the end of many human lives. These black pixels in such an image can say a lot more than the lit ones. This also applies to the Korean peninsula. While South Korea is brightly lit, North Korea is almost completely black. The metropolitan area around the capital of the South, Seoul, now has more than 25 million inhabitants. The population density here is twice that of New York City and 8 times larger than that of Rome. Also, the waters surrounding Korea are brightly lit from the numerous fishing boats off the coast. According to the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, there are clear rules for how far off the coast a country may exploit its resources. Additionally, there are several agreements between countries that regulate fishing. This creates odd shapes and perfectly straight lines, bringing to light the absurdity of dividing our planet into arbitrary legal zones. All these lights from South Korea and the waters that surround it stand in stark contrast to the north, where only the North Korean capital Pyongyang stands out a bit. North Korea's energy infrastructure is obsolete and power shortages are frequent. While South Korea is easily accessible, much of what happens in the north remains in the dark. And the strictly guarded border dividing both nations, the DMZ, is clearly traceable. This image may be the most impressive illustration of how big the impact of more than 70 years of division are. But the map also teaches us the long-lasting impact such separations can have, even those that have already been overcome. At the time of the Cold War, Germany was separated into East and West, and the city of Berlin was divided as well. And as a result of that, its city lights still appear in 2 different colors. The western part of the city was cut off from the rest of West Germany and relied on gas lamps because it wanted to be independent from a possibly failing power supply. Although Germany has been reunited since 1990 and this separation has been overcome for more than a quarter of a century, it can still be seen from space. This image points to the global challenges posed by the steadily increasing world population. And while man-made borders cannot be seen during the day, the lines of political origin become apparent at night, but appear all the more absurd and artificial. When viewed during daylight, the human influence on our planet is less obvious. But this single image highlights the social divides and political strife from both past and the present.
Okay. So the message is that one image can tell many stories. One image can be useful for understanding economic growth. One image can be useful for understanding conflict and war and legal borders. So satellite images are not useful only for understanding the weather. Satellite images can tell us what humans have been doing. Satellite images can tell us where development has happened, where development is changing. This is what I mean by a new perspective. It's a new perspective of development, but from above. And as you can see, I think it's interesting. I think it can help you identify new problems. It can help you identify new solutions. It is a learning opportunity that all of us now have. Let me show you another example of how an image can tell multiple stories. Look at this image. The question that I have for all of you is, why are the lights of Japan, South Korea, and China different? So this is kind of a puzzle because I'm using satellite images to take a picture of Japan, South Korea, and China. But in this display, the colors are slightly different. So China, it tends to be red and dark orange. Japan tends to be white. And South Korea tends to be yellow. What would be the message here? Is there a problem? Why is this happening? Is this real? Or is this just an illusion? Do you think this image is fake? If it's fake, I'm going to tell you, it is fake. But it's fake, but useful. Okay, it's fake, but it's useful. It's fake in which way? The colors should be the same. So when you take the initial picture, there is no difference in colors. But for display purposes, we can show that there are differences in colors. So what am I displaying here? And this is something that many of you might remember from primary school. What's the difference between colors? Do you remember this picture? If you want to make the color white, you need to combine red with green and blue, and you get the color white. Oh, okay. So Japan is the combination of red, blue, and green. So that's why Japan is white. What happens if it's yellow? How do I make the yellow color? Well, the yellow color is the combination of green and red. Okay, I more or less get it. South Korea, in particular, Seoul is mostly yellow. But China is mostly red. Okay, so can we use the theory of color to understand the development differences from Japan, South Korea, and China? So let me tell you the easiest one, the Japanese case. The nighttime lights of Japan are white. How can we understand the white color? Well, the white color is a combination of red, green, and blue. If you want to get white, you need to have high red, high green, and high blue. It means that in 1993, the nighttime lights, the value of nighttime lights in Japan in 1993 was high. In 2003, the value of nighttime lights in Japan was high. And in 2013, the value of nighttime lights was high. So it was always high. Essentially, Japan was already a developed country in 1993. It remained developed in 2003, and it's already developed in 2013. So it was always developed. That is why it's always high. And when it's always high, you get the color white. Now, think about China. China has many red places. If you find a place that is red, what is the meaning of the color red? It means that in the past, they have low development. That is in 2013. In 1993, it was low. In 2003, it was low. But in 2013, it was high. So the regions in red are telling you that in recent years, development happened in those places. So if you are an investor and if you are looking to invest, where would you put your money? Where would you put your money? In the red places. The red places, they used to be poor, but now they are growing. They are growing very fast. The white places, they were always rich. Look at the yellow places. In the yellow places, like Seoul, it used to have low luminosity in 1993, But by 2003, luminosity was high, and by 2013, luminosity was also high. So this is an example in which visualization can tell you more stories. One image can tell you more stories if you are able to understand how to process the image. All of you understand what is red, what is blue, what is green. And all of you understand when you combine these colors, you get white. Okay, Japan is white. It means that development in Japan happened long ago, before 2000, before 1993. And development in China is recent. That's why China is red. But not all the regions of China are red. There are many regions in dark. There are many regions in yellow. And there are some regions in white. So this is the beauty and the insights of satellite images. I'm showing you an example that satellite images are useful to understand the weather. Yes, you need those images, but they are also useful to understand development. And here, in one picture, you understand the development differences between Japan, South Korea, and China. And at a very simple level, Japan was developed before South Korea, and South Korea was developed before China. But now, you know, that's obvious. You know that. But what you didn't know is where development happened first. Where in China there is very fast growth. Where in China there is very low growth. That is the beauty of nighttime lights. One picture is telling you changes over time and across the space. And I hope that is something that you can remember and see this as an opportunity to understand the world. This is an opportunity to understand the world in a different way. Now, let me start wrapping up. Some of when I present this, students ask me, how can I start my learning journey? I want to start learning how to see the world from above. And here I have 6 books. 5 of them are free. You can get The Earth at Night, a book written by the NASA for free, which is very easy to understand. You're going to learn very nice pictures. This is for the general public. If you are an economist and you are interested in development, I highly recommend this other book. It's called Pixels of Progress, a granular look at human development around the world. You can also read the World Bank report, Growth from Above. There is a recent book by the Asia Development Bank on mapping poverty through artificial intelligence, in particular satellite images. And there is this other book, this one is not free, but is highly recommended, is How Nighttime Lights Can Be Useful to Understand Elections and other very important issues. So at some point, if you really like this approach and if you want to see the world from another perspective, I would say pick any of these books. And if you have to start somewhere, I highly recommend this book, which is a website, which has a website. You just Google these words and you will find it. And you can also get this book for free, where you will see amazing pictures. But this is also highly recommended. And if you are a professional researcher, this book is a summary on what do we know about nighttime lights to understand economic performance. So this is more technical. So for those of you who want to go to a deeper level, this book is recommended. But if you want to begin, I would say this book and this book are useful places to start. And if you have some money to invest, you can also read this book. So those are my recommendations. Hopefully you are motivated. Hopefully you have some guidance. But let me tell you one final advice. How do you understand the data of these images? My eyes understand, but sometimes your eyes are not enough. Sometimes you need a computer, and the computer is going to do the data crunching. And that is the last part of my presentation, which is that we can understand the world through geospatial data science. So now we want to do data analysis. It's not enough to look at the pictures. We want to process the pictures, and we want to do a statistical analysis with the pictures. And I like this quote. It's by Isaac Newton, and he's telling us that if I have seen farther, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants. Who are the giants? Where are they? The giant that you are going to use to look farther is data science. Data science is where statistics, programming, and domain knowledge, for instance, economics, can be combined. And when you combine these three fields, statistics with programming and economics, you can look farther. And that is the message that I want you to remember. By combining multiple fields, you can have a different perspective. And in particular, spatial data science is the combination of normal data science plus geographical information science. You combine these two fields and you get the field of spatial data science, which is the tool that you can use to analyze the images that I just showed you. So I show you the images, but you want to do further analysis? The tools that you can use are the spatial data science tools. But you say, this seems complicated. It seems that there is a lot of programming. I am afraid I'm not a programmer. Can I do this? Well, we need an easy to use free software that anybody can use for free without programming. It's the easiest starting point. If you are going to start analyzing geospatial data of cities, of provinces, I recommend using point and click. The point and click approach of geospatial data science. Essentially, you just move your mouse, you point, you click, you learn something. You point, you click, you learn something. So you don't have to be a programmer to start learning and using geospatial data science. And the software that I usually recommend to my students who are beginning their journey is Geoda. What is Geoda? In one video, have a look.
Are you looking for an easy way to analyze your geospatial area data? Would you like to gain insights faster than you usually do? We developed a software called Geoda that introduces people to the analysis of spatial area data and helps you gain a quick overview of it, find interesting patterns, and test hypotheses. Geoda provides a user-friendly and graphical interface to methods of exploratory spatial data analysis, also known as ESDA, such as spatial autocorrelation statistics for aggregate data and basic spatial regression analysis for point and polygon data. You can explore statistical and mapping views of spatial data through linking and brushing to discover correlations, clusters, and trends, and to detect unusual observations. Geoda supplements other GIS programs like QGIS or ArcGIS by focusing on specialized spatial analysis functionality. It is free for non-commercial use because it was funded by federal agencies like the National Science Foundation and the National Institutes of Health. It is cross-platform and runs on Windows, Mac, and Linux, and it is open source. The Geoda library is currently under development, so you can use it in Python, R, Postgres, and other programming languages. You can also use Geoda in many languages. Volunteers have translated the English version of Geoda into Chinese, Spanish, and Russian, and continue to work on other languages. To contribute, please see the description of this video for more information. So who mostly uses Geoda? As of September 2020, over 360,000 people have used the software since it was launched in 2004. And this includes not just faculty, researchers, and students in academia, but also government organizations and nonprofits across the world. So how do you start? First, you can import, convert, and export data in different formats. Then, you can also transfer variables and create new ones, and also display additional layers. But why use Geoda? Our software allows you to gain new insights from your spatial data by interactively exploring the data in multiple views with a user-friendly interface. You can detect patterns and correlations, find trends with different maps and statistical views, and detect outliers like here across box plots and box maps. We've recently introduced a lot of new cluster functionality in Geoda 1.16, as well as many global and local spatial autocorrelation statistics. After exploring the spatial data in multiple views and generating hypotheses about relationships, you can produce these global and local spatial autocorrelation statistics as well as spatial regression models. You can download Geoda by following this link. New versions of the program are released regularly. Additionally, you can access Geoda-related resources on this webpage. Luke Anseling, who founded Geoda and directs the University of Chicago's Center for Spatial Data Science, has created extensive tutorials for all spatial methods and tools in Geoda, which you can access for free on our website under the documentation section. Also, if you have trouble finding the Geoda tool you need, we have developed a cheat sheet that can help you find your way. Finally, we have a YouTube channel with lots of recorded lectures of Dr. Anseling explaining the spatial methods implemented in Geoda and examples of how to use it. If you would like to get in touch with us, you can also find our contact information in the description of this video or submit a ticket on Geoda's GitHub site. Enjoy!
So you have excellent resources nowadays to start your journey. Some people think it's complicated. Some people think it's for engineers. This is not for social scientists. This is an example that social scientists are developing new skills. Geoda is a very easy to use software that now you can have a video lecture guidance on Introduction to Spatial Data Science. You go to this link or you just Google this Introduction to Spatial Data Science and you will have step-by-step guidance on what is mapping, how to do mapping, how to interpret mapping. So you get data from satellites. They look great, but you can go one step farther. You can do the statistical analysis. But if you're not sure how to do spatial data analysis, now you have an entire video lectures, or a collection of video lectures where you can apply new insights from geospatial data science. And you have not only the video lectures, but you have a free book about the main and the basic analysis that you can try to learn. Okay, so there is a book, there is a video channel, and there is a software. So when you learn something, you need support. You need technical support from a software, you need lectures, and you need a book that you can learn on your own. So I highly recommend for those of you who are planning to start this new journey, start with Geoda. It's very friendly and easy to use. But for some of you who want to go to the next step, now we can use programming languages such as R. Some of you might heard of R, which is a very useful programming language. That's good. You can use R to do many of the analysis of spatial data science, because nowadays you have another advantage that I didn't have when I was a student like you. Now you can program with the help of AI. So this is AI-based programming. Many people are afraid of programming, but with the help of AI, programming is much easier if you know how to ask good questions in the AI prompt. So you can use AI to do programming with R, and there are excellent free books that I recommend. If you look into the future and you want to develop your programming skills, Spatial Data Science with R applications is a very new book, highly recommended. And there is this other book, Geographic Data Science with R, also free, with code, with many useful tutorials. I highly recommend this. But if you don't use R, maybe some of you might heard Python. Python is another programming language that is very popular for geospatial analysis. And you can use AI to learn how to program in Python. And there are excellent Python books that are free. I really like this new book called Geographic Data Science with Python. The book is online and you have all of the code and you can replicate all of the results of the book. So you have excellent materials, and I have my own material. So when my students come and they start learning with me, I usually recommend this notebook that I created. And in this notebook, you have a collection of videos and a collection of tutorials on how to measure inequality using regional data. Okay, so there are many, many tutorials that if you are interested, you can go to my website and you can start clicking here and there. And I don't want you to be overloaded, but what I need you to understand is that the world is changing and there are new technologies, there are new data sets, there are new perspectives. The only thing that we need is motivated students who see the opportunity and start making the connections and discover something new, not only from below, that is still important, but from above, we can have an alternative perspective. The combination of research from above and research from below can be very, very exciting because you are using two perspectives. That's why you have two eyes. One eye is to observe the world from above. The other eye is to observe the world from below. Use your two eyes because satellites are also your eyes. And finally, you are not alone. There are huge communities that are doing geospatial research. And this is one of my favorite communities. This is called the Geo for Good community. And probably this is going to be the last video that I'm going to show you today.
Welcome to the biggest Geo for Good we have ever had. This is you, coming from all over the world. 300 people here, 2,000 people coming in over live stream. This is the flagship event of the year for us to engage with you all. I think this is not a news flash, but we're hitting planetary tipping points right now. And I think everyone has acknowledged that the time for talk is past. We have to turn rhetoric to reality.
The work that people are doing is incredibly important, and they're all working on these big environmental and social challenges. You've got your nonprofits, government agencies, indigenous and local communities, and they're all coming here together to collaborate and talk about ways that technology can help have impact.
I'm trying to use machine learning to automatically detect landslides.
Generating hourly parameters for wildfires in the western U.S.
Map water across Brazil.
Monitoring deforestation.
Looking at the water resources on the Navajo Nation.
To collect data about air pollution in Copenhagen.
Across the 3 days of the summit, it's just jam-packed with different sessions and activities.
I think the hands-on workshops are where I usually learn the most. You get to actually talk with the Google engineers and collaborate with peers.
I just ran into my undergrad friend from Colombia.
Yeah, we didn't even know we were going to be here, so I think there's a lot of spaces where we can collaborate, share data, and actually help each other.
So it's awesome.
I definitely think the most valuable aspect of Geo for Good is just the community that we all together have built and grown over the past 11 years. It's just so valuable to be able to connect together again.
This community has shown how fantastic you are at building bridges to do what needs to be done to address the challenges we face. And just think of what we can do together.
I hope that people leave the summit week feeling really inspired about what new features they might be able to use for their work. And I also hope they leave having met at least one new person that they are excited to collaborate with.
We've really now begun to feel like there's something happening where we are all coming together. We can't do it alone.
So I want to finish today with this message. The message is going to be as follows. Let me close this. Oh. Okay, so let me make it. Okay, now it's working. My final slide is the following. The world has been changing tremendously. And I believe that to understand this change, having only one perspective, it's not enough. I told you that relying only on macro data, it's not enough. Relying only on micro data, it's not enough. Relying on the perspective from below, it's not enough. It's the combination of multiple perspectives, macro data, regional data, micro data, research from below, research from above, and also research beyond economics. Economics is great, but it's not the only language to understand development. There are other fields that want to understand development. And this regional perspective has been very helpful to me because I'm very happy to talk to computer scientists who work with data analysis. I'm very happy to talk to statisticians who work with statistical models. I'm very happy to talk to geographers who understand the logic of geography. I'm very happy to talk with engineers who work with satellite images. The main advice that I want you to give you at the end is that having multiple perspectives is important, but to have a multiple perspective, you need to talk to multiple people. Go and talk to geographers, go and talk to computer scientists, and maybe you can find common ground. I've been lucky enough to find people in different fields that are interested in geographical development. And that made my life much more rich from a multiple perspective point of view. And education starts with your main major, but it doesn't end in the major of economics. You can combine economics with other fields, and hopefully regional development can be a way to integrate economics with geography, with computer science, with remote sensing, and other fields. And in the end, I hope you can learn from multiple perspectives. Interdisciplinary learning is an important skill that I believe students can develop in the next years. Thank you very much to all of you. Thank you for listening to me. If you want to know more, all of my slides and many other tutorials are available here. Just go to carlosmendez.org. You will have access to the same slides with the same links and other videos that I didn't have time to show you. But you can also find presentations, apps, you can find data, you can find academic papers. I hope you can find something that is interesting to you, and you learn and also discover the world of regional development. Thank you very much, and I'm very happy to answer any question that you might have.
All right. So yeah, thank you very much, Professor Carlos, for your very insightful presentation and also very interesting presentation. However, maybe we have a few times to the rest of our webinar, because we have to end this webinar at 12 o'clock Japan times or 10 o'clock in Indonesian time. But of course, we will open maybe for some participants, one or two participants, to ask question. Please, maybe you can raise your hand if you have any question to Professor Carlos. Okay, so we have one participant has raised up their hand. I think Pak Hari. Okay, please, Pak Hari, you can ask question to Professor Carlos.
Okay, thank you very much, Pak Muiz, for the time. Carlos Sensei, how are you?
Hello, Harry. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. So it's always a joy for me to hear your presentation, because whenever I hear your presentation, I get motivated, and you always present something new, so we can improve over time. So I can confirm here, during 4 years, I'm sorry, I'm outside now.
It's okay.
So yeah, so let me go straight forward to the question. In this 21st century, what we are looking now is not only labor, but the talent. So, and that is what we are lacking for. I can confirm now here in my office, we are looking for digital talent. So what would be your suggestion for the students here to start learning, to prepare themselves as the future digital talents for further development of Indonesia? So what would be your advice and your view on this dimension? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Harry. Thank you. So Harry was one of the best students that I had here, and now he's back in Indonesia, and he's great. And if some of you have time, get to know Harry. I think he learned a lot when he was a student here, and he also is a collaborator on many projects. So thank you, Harry, for the question. And for those students who are willing to start a new journey, understand that the world has location, and location can give you something that might be hidden. And the basic advice is you learn from your group. Your first group is your family. Your family is an important source of love and also information. But now the next question is, who are your neighbors? Because you are going to learn a lot from your neighbors. As a human, you have the freedom to select who are your neighbors, your best friends, your close friends. Hopefully, you identify those friends who make you grow. Hopefully, you identify those friends who are not only good people, but also people who want to learn something new. So my advice, to learn something new, it starts with your own desire to grow, but it can be much better if you are surrounded by other digital learners. Start looking for those digital learners that are close to you and learn together. So probably what I want to emphasize here is, it's a new journey. Don't do this journey alone. You do it alone, and at some point it's very easy to get overwhelmed with stress, with failure. But you do it as a group, and you help together as a group, you can go farther. So my experience is, sometimes when I was learning this, I got a mistake. I didn't know how to solve the coding problem. But I had a friend who can revise my code and tell me, you made a mistake here, or why don't you try this? So I would say, start your journey, but do not start your journey alone. Find a good learning group and learn together. Thank you, Harry, for the question.
Thank you very much, Carlos.
There are some questions in the chat. I don't know if I have time. Should I answer those?
Yeah, it's up to you, Professor Carlos. If you have, sometimes you may answer the question from the chat box.
Yeah, definitely. I'm very happy to answer any question that people have, and I don't have any problem if I need to stay a couple of minutes. I'm okay. So there is this question on using other sources of data, such as cellular phones, and that is true. So in addition to satellite data, we can also use cell phone data, and that is an opportunity that is growing. But compared to satellite images, cell phone data have a challenge that is kind of a constraint. Cell phone data is much more private. So it's very difficult to get cell phone data if you don't have a specific agreement with the cell phone provider, because the cell phone provider is going to protect the privacy of the users. But I've seen some research in which there is a privacy agreement. The researcher and the cell phone company, they have an agreement, so the researcher can use the cell phone data. But compared to satellite images, many satellite images are free. You can use them without problem. Cell phone data, it's very interesting, but to this date, I find it difficult to get access with, because you have to negotiate with the cell phone providers because of privacy issues. Satellite images, luckily, they are much more open and ready to use. So that is that question. There is this other question about, is nighttime light data accurate, can be accurate? And is this influenced by non-economic factors such as cultural practices? Like some societies prefer to reduce light. And the answer is yes. So nighttime light is an opportunity, but it's not perfect. So nighttime light has its own problems and to some extent its own biases. And like any other data, like GDP is also imperfect. You might say GDP does not measure the informal economy, but the informal economy uses lights to produce something. So I would say nighttime lights are not perfect. GDP is not perfect. And when you combine these two sources, in many cases, you can solve some of the problems. So it's the combination of nighttime lights and something else that can help you solve those problems. So in some research projects that I have with Harry, we are combining nighttime lights with GDP data. And it's the combination of nighttime lights and GDP data that can help you solve some of the problems that each of those data sets have. In other projects, we are combining nighttime lights with daytime images. So for instance, nighttime lights do not work well in agriculture, but we can use daytime images and we can measure the intensity of the color green. If green is healthy vegetation, we can use daytime images and then combine daytime images with nighttime images. So it's the combination that can help you solve some problems. But I agree, the data is not perfect, but as a researcher, it's our job to try to find a solution. And in my case, combining nighttime lights with GDP can be sometimes helpful. Combining nighttime lights with daytime images can be helpful. So it's a combination that can give you an additional opportunity. Then the next question is, how can regional inequality analysis be integrated with high-level geospatial data, such as satellite images, to understand changes in land use patterns and implications for inequality? So today, I mostly talk about satellite images and nighttime images in particular. But as I mentioned before, it is when you combine nighttime light images with something else that you can learn much more. So as a starting point, you can try to combine daytime images with nighttime light images. But what I'm also very interested is in combining micro data that you get from surveys with data that you get from satellites. Because when you go to the field, a question that you can ask is, where do you live? Do you live in what village? What's the name of the village that you live in? So you get that information from the micro data. And then from the satellite data, you have the picture of the village. So you can match the village information from above with the village information from below. And I find this combination of micro data from surveys and satellite data very, very insightful, because you discover new opportunities. So I highly recommend, if you have a survey and that survey has location information, like in which city do you live, in which village do you live, you can combine that. And I believe that that is going to be an exciting opportunity for further research. Microdata plus satellite data. Okay, is there any other question?
Yes, please, if you have any question, you may ask the question to using chat box, maybe. Nothing? Okay. All right. So, yeah, thank you very much, Professor Carlos Mendes, for your very encouraging presentation today in our webinar. And due to time constraint, yeah, we must immediately end this very interesting webinar. So we hope that we can, keep in touch with you to have another webinar to discuss more about regional development and also about geospatial data science. Now, I want to express our heartfelt gratitude to Professor Carlos Mendes for sharing his expertise with us today. Your insights have greatly enriched our understanding in this subject. And also, I want to thank you to all of participants for your active engagement and thoughtful question have truly enriched this event. As we wrap up today's proceeding, I encourage you to continue the conversation and exploration of these topics beyond this virtual space. And thank you once again for your participation, and I look forward to future opportunities for us to connect and learn together. With that, I officially conclude our event, wishing you all a wonderful day ahead. So once again, thank you very much for your participation, and also thank you very much for Professor Carlos Mendes to this webinar.
Thank you very much to all the participants. Thank you. Thank you, Muiz, for the invitation. Thank you to all of you.
Yeah, see you again, Sensei.
Hey, Sensei. See you.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye, Sensei.